the Santa Barbara Unified School Board meeting of June 11th. Before we begin closed session, we have one comment, I believe.
Yes, we have one public comment, and we have John Morris. And we have, John, thank you. So you have 3 minutes, and you can come up to the podium over here. Thank you. And at 30 seconds, I'll warn you that you have 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Morris. I'm a member of Fair Education Santa Barbara. I am not counsel of record in the lawsuit. However, I am an attorney, and I have some things I'd like to say about the lawsuit. There have been allegations and statements in the record that somehow the lawsuit in the federal court was dismissed and lost. I'd like to set the record straight on that. In fact, May 28 meeting, Greg Price made a comment that that lawsuit has already been dismissed by the federal court. In fact, that lawsuit did not resolve any issues on the merits. It was resolved on the basis of lack of jurisdiction to handle the state law claim based on the contract and the absence of allegations to support standing in the federal court as to the other actions. That standing allegation is easily resolved, in fact, has been resolved in the state court action. The federal court granted leave to amend the federal court action, but rather than do it piecemeal in federal court and state court, the decision was made to do the entire action in the state court. And that's why the state court action was filed as it was. So nothing has been decided on the merits. Fair Education looks forward to having the action resolved on the merits in the state court action. To the extent anybody's won or lost so far, the only losers have been the Santa Barbara School District, which made a motion for fees, which was denied entirely, and the motion by JCCC to have the motion dismissed with prejudice. That motion was also denied. So with that, I cede the rest of my time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move into closed session. Thanks for being here.
So, correct. We have a rare task for the board to appoint me as your labor negotiator for 2 items. One is the contracts with the assistant superintendents, and 2 is for the Tatum property.
So we need a motion for that, I believe.
Yes, action item.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then also what's appropriate is to announce that we're going into closed session to cover items B1 through 7.
Great, thank you. So we're going to closed session to cover items B1 through 7. Thank you. I'd like to call to order the regular session of the Board of Education meeting today on June 11th, 2019. So welcome, everybody. I'm Laura Capps as Vice President, sitting in for President Wendy Sims-Moten, who is on work travel. So bear with me as I might bumble a little bit on this agenda as my first time. It's first week of summer. We're all coming off of a wonderful week of graduation where I know my colleagues attended several, and all of our team here in the cabinet attended many, many graduations and got to shake literally thousands of excited hands and hand diplomas. It was wonderful. One of the best parts, if not the best part, about being a school board member. So it's nice to have those of you here. Hope you're off to a good summer. And we will move into the meeting. Let's see. Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka.
Please rise.
Tenemos interpretación al español por si alguien gusta escuchar la reunión en español. We have Spanish interpretation available.
Yes, and headsets too for the hearing impaired. Please indicate if you need one. So now, I don't believe there's any announcements on C5 of any closed session action. So, No, I thought we were doing it at the action item. I don't have, but her name. Okay. Thank you. We did vote in closed session on the appointment of an assistant principal, Valerie Galindo. The motion was made by myself and seconded by Dr. Jackie Reed, and it was unanimous. Okay, now moving on to item C6, the superintendent's report. Mr. Matsuoka.
I just wanted to add my comments about graduation week. It is so cool to go to a 6th grade promotion and then an 8th grade, it's a promotion, some people call it graduation, and then to watch the seniors go across the stage and the progression of growth from little kids to medium-sized kids. But the growth in high school is just so tremendous. That's why I taught high school for my whole career. Just love that developmental stage. So yes, congratulations to all our students, families, and we wish them well in their summers and their future. So we have 2 introductions to make at this meeting. These are appointments that the board approved in past meetings. First, I'd like to introduce Dr. Annalise Alvarez, and she's going to be a dean of students at San Marcos High School. And Fran Waganek is going to make the introductions.
Good evening, board, Mr. Matsuoka. Yeah, I'm really pleased to get to introduce Dr. Annalise Alvarez, especially recently new, probably hasn't heard the term doctor too much, but get used to it. We were pleased to bring Annalise on to replace Jen Balacius, a former dean at San Marcos. And as Dean of Student Engagement, she will be responsible for exactly what the title says, engaging the students who are disengaging. And so overseeing attendance, but also social emotional welfare of students and other things related to that. And so we are pleased to have Annalise here also because she is one of us, a graduate of La Cumbre Junior High School and San Marcos High School. And so with that, Annalise, if you'd like to come up and say a few words.
Thank you very much. And you're absolutely right. I am not used to that in front of my name. Just a month ago defended my dissertation, so it makes my stomach flip a little bit every time I'm introduced as such. I actually got a piece of mail and I couldn't open it. It's so new. But I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy to come home. I left after graduating from San Marcos and went to college in Los Angeles and started my teaching career in Ventura County with Oxnard Union High School District. Then I taught for about a decade in Clark County School District in North Las Vegas. All 15 of those years as a high school band director. I was also very heavily involved in the band at San Marcos, and that's actually where my passion started. I stepped on the podium my sophomore year of high school at 15 years old and just kind of knew that being a high school band director was going to be my thing. So the last 4 years was living in Toledo, teaching the university, being on staff with the university marching band there, and teaching undergraduate education courses and earning the doctorate. And I felt it, as someone who kind of believes a little bit in the ethereal and the mystical, I thought it was very, I don't know, supposed to happen, that a whole slew of admin jobs opened up at the time I was applying for my next step, and my doctorate is in education administration, and the path from becoming an administrator was started when I was teaching in Las Vegas from a supervisor who said, you know, the parallels from being a high school band director and being a high school principal are pretty much the same. So, you know, you're really good at this, you might be really good at this. So I'm very happy that positions opened up, and I think student engagement was 100% what I focused on. My dissertation was on mindfulness for adolescents in urban high schools. So I can't believe how well fit I feel I matched for the job, and I'm just very excited to come home and really, more than anything, give back to the community that raised me. When I was applying for jobs, a very dear friend of mine said something to me that really hit me, and I pretty much shared it in every interview that I had this spring. But what she said to me was, imagine the you of now standing in front of the you of then, and how impactful that would have been for her then. And I think that's pretty much what I'm hoping to do here, and meet and hopefully engage students and get them to succeed. So super happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me today, and look forward to meeting all of you and working alongside all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
And our second introduction is Cammie Barnwell. And Cammie has probably spent more time in this room than any of us. I'll just share some quick stories. She was a reporter for the News Press back in the 90s. I'm looking for her head nod. And she covered Santa Barbara Unified, I think, for almost a decade. So that's a lot of board meetings. She knows our district and community super well. She's been a parent. Her kids have all gone through our schools. And she will probably share in her comments, this is the dream job that she had hoped for 25 years ago. So we're glad that we get to be part of your dream, Cammie. So welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I really feel like I have come full circle. As you said, 22 years ago, a month ago, I started as a reporter in this room. I was very lucky to get that job. I was pretty young, but they needed a Spanish speaker and they needed a writer. And I got the gig, and here I am today, after a decade of covering government and schools, many, many, many late night board meetings, watching different boards come through, different leadership. There were only like 2 people over here at one point. It's grown so much, and I love to see that. I love to see that our community is impassioned about the schools. By the way, I think that's cool. I love that our meetings go late. I love that we have really interested people. Well, now wait. As someone who, think of the alternative, that no one shows up. People don't care. That would be bad. So I love it. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to come full circle in my career. As you said, Superintendent Matsuoka, thank you so much for choosing me for this position. Thank you to the board as well. I know some of you for quite some time as well. Dr. Reed was one of my teachers at Antioch, and Kate Ford was the principal to my children at Peabody. I've interviewed Fran countless times. At one point, I thought maybe you didn't like me anymore. Few too many quotes out there. But it turns out we go way back, and I'm just thrilled. I'm pinching myself, really. When I left the news press, I got into PR and marketing, did some HR, did some training, did employee engagement, wound up at a big software company, which is not a bad gig. But about halfway through, I thought, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I needed to find meaning in my profession again, and I met Jackie. I decided to go and get my master's in education, ended up getting my credential in academic counseling, spent 700 hours shadowing the amazing counselors that Fran oversees, and man, just humbled and in awe of the work that's being done in our community. And it's so interesting to come at it from all these different angles as well. From the person in the boardroom trying to get someone to talk to them, to the person on the inside really observing and learning and seeing how passionate our community of educators are in this town, and the families and the students and the teachers. And I'm like I said, I'm just thrilled to be here. You had said when I talked to you earlier about the job, just from the very beginning, you were looking for a storyteller. I've always considered myself a storyteller. I'm a pretty good writer. I'm a better storyteller, and I know the journalists in this town who know me can tell you that. I'm fascinated by people's stories, and I really love to listen and learn and help people capture the essence of what they're trying to accomplish. So this is just too good to be true, and I can't wait to get started next week. And thank you so much for this vote of confidence in me. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Welcome, Cammie, and welcome, Anna.
And we have another introduction of somebody who's been around with us for a long, long time, and that's our now Director of Human Resources, Ann Peak. And so, Ann, would you please come forward and just tell us, you could tell us about yourself. And as she makes her, I mean, Ann has really been the rock of HR for a long time. She literally has run that department for on and off for, well, gosh,
We
over.
won't say how many
Yeah, we won't
years.
say how long. Ann and I worked very closely together last year when I was running HR, and I just had to rely on her every day, and she's fantastic, and so we're really grateful to have you serve now as Director of HR. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Board of Education, Mr. Matsuoka, for your, I guess, kind of vote of confidence in me. I love what I do. I love this district. And I just look forward to quite a few more years serving students and staff. So.
Great. All right. Thanks.
Very good. Okay, moving along to item C7, and I will say, that's board comments and correspondence. This is going to be a short meeting tonight. That's my projection, as we've had some doozies of 7 hours plus. So with that in mind, I open it up to my colleagues for any board comments or correspondence. Rose, did you say you have one? I'm sorry, or Kate, I can't tell.
Thank you.
Ms. Ford.
I'll try to keep it short, but I just want to say that I was so lucky, just to piggyback a little bit on what Mr. Matsuoka said. I was lucky enough to attend both Franklin's and Santa Barbara High School's graduations/promotions, and just want to point out two things. One is that they were so confidently and respectfully and sort of perfectly organized by the two principals, Casey Kilgore and Elise Simmons, and they were student-directed, student-centered, and both were beautiful evenings, and I just felt tremendous pride for our district and for the schools themselves. I also just wanted to mention that we're 6 months into 2019, and I swear that Cammie and I didn't talk to each other, but I did have in my notes just to say that the involvement of parents, of course, it seems to sometimes be difficult, and because it isn't always positive, some of it is critical. It is difficult, but I'm just really gratified by the involvement of people in this community because it isn't a given. And there are plenty of districts where meetings go where no one shows up and people conduct all the business sort of in a vacuum. And I'm really proud of our district for having a parent community and a community that is involved. So it's very exciting for me. I also just wanted to really welcome Annalise and Cammie. I think we're really lucky to have both of you. And as a Santa Barbaran, I would say you are lucky to be part of this team. So thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I had a wonderful week and a half or so. Started out by going to see the Adelante performance that was at the Marjorie Luke Theater, which was just amazing. And seeing the joy and the interaction between the children and the sense of community that was there. I also attended the Santa Barbara Community Academy, the 6th grade graduation, and saw them at their best, and the kindergarten graduation at Adelante, which that day was just, I realized why I became a board member with all of the students and, from the very young to the older students. And then I attended the San Marcos graduation, which, just seeing them and launching off to their future careers and if they're going to college or trying to figure things out. I really, like I said, that's why I became a board member. So even though it was a little bit exhausting, it was very fulfilling. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Reed?
So, not to be redundant, but I do want to congratulate and welcome Annalise and Connie and Ann. Got to bring Ann Peak in there too, for all your hard work. Did I say Annie? I meant Cammie. Okay, I know her because she was my student, okay. So, all right. But I also wanted just to speak also to the graduations. I attended the Santa Barbara Community Academy, and that was really great to see our new Anna Scharfeld lead that graduation. It was very meaningful, like you said. The two peak award ceremonies were really impactful to me. Seeing Santa Barbara High School and Santa Barbara for the first time, and then San Marcos High School. But just the growth of that program and the impact that it has and the potentiality for these students going forward and the mentorship that is there is, I just want to commend the work that Dr. Patricia Madrigal has done in leading that cause and being really forward-thinking about how to grow that program. And so that was very, very meaningful. Also attending the Dos Pueblos High graduation and just hearing the speakers, which were really amazing. The last speaker spoke in a poem, sort of like a rap poem. Anyway, I was just like, I just wanted to stand up, but I didn't, stood back. But it just really was exciting. And I felt when I was sitting there, wow, I wish I was in high school again, because it's so exciting. They're just so ready to start off something new. And I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to start new? So anyway, I have to figure that out. But thank you. It was just a great week. Oh, and one last thing. We are having an awards ceremony at the end of the ELAC officer meeting. And I just want to acknowledge that these officers and the work that they do in our schools is vital and important. And we began last year recognizing them, but I want to make sure that we continue to recognize the work of our parents, exactly what Ms. Ford said. The engagement of our parents is crucial, and to be able to acknowledge the work that they're doing to support our students is crucial as well. So I just wanted to say that that's happening this week, and I'm looking forward to being there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add two things. One, I'm wearing orange. I've had correspondence from the organization I have supported for quite a while, the Coalition Against Gun Violence. And this last weekend, as some of you might know, was Wear Orange in honor of all the victims of gun violence, especially students. It was started 5 years ago after a young high school student had just performed at the White House and then was shot down in Chicago. And orange is the symbol of safety that hunters wear as to not get shot. So in honor of the hard work and the connection to our schools and sadly, to our students, I honor the Coalition Against Gun Violence this weekend. And in fact, this weekend, there's a buyback program that they've been doing for decades here in Santa Barbara at Earl Warren Showgrounds. So that's number one. Number two, our school district does many wonderful things, and one of them is to be such a participant in the summer meal program. It's now summer, where tons of kids who normally relied on free and reduced meals, 1 in 5 kids are food insecure in this county, don't have those free and reduced meals, but they actually do. They don't have them at school, but they have them in parks and community centers, and there's 52 places around the county where any child can get a free meal. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner in many of the places. The organization I work with, No Kid Hungry, is a supporter of the school district in that regard. And the school district provides the meals, healthy, organic, nutritious, free meals to the vast majority of those 52 places, even up in North County. So it's quite a remarkable undertaking. And you can find out just by texting 877-877 summer food, the places near you. So it's a wonderful resource that we and our food service program really devotes a lot of heart and energy to. So that's it for me. Thank you to my colleagues. Yeah, Ms. Munoz, do you have something else?
Sorry, I neglected to say that I also went to the La Cuesta and Alta Vista graduation, which we attended along with Carrie and our board president, Wendy. And they, oh my goodness, the students, the teachers and the students are just, the teacher spoke about every student and how they got to the school, what they accomplished there, and what their goals were. I also wanted to give credit to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. With that, I will close item 7 and move on to item number C8, which is public comments on non-agenda matters within jurisdiction of the Board of Education. Dr. Reed.
Yes, so in this case, we call up 3 people at a time, and we provide them with 3 minutes. And at 30 seconds, we give them the warning that they have 30 seconds before they need to finish their last comments. So we're going to start with Ann Burdette, then Louis Angeloro, and then Jessica Paredes Ulloa. So we're looking for Ann Burdette.
Good evening, Superintendent Matsuoka and board members. My name is Ann Burdette, and I would like to state my perspective on the Hidden Valley Farms project. I am the secretary of the Santa Barbara Urban Creeks Council and also a student. I graduate from Anacapa School tomorrow and will then attend UCSB's Environmental Studies program. I hope to see the Hidden Valley site used as an open space preserve rather than an organic farm. Not only would on-campus farm education be more engaging and more economically feasible than farm education at Hidden Valley, developing the open space would take away the opportunity to use the natural habitat there as its own learning experience. The site is home to bobcats, hawks, dusky-footed wood rats, and other native wildlife, and contains 5 major habitat types. The creek that runs through the property is designated critical habitat for southern steelhead in the NOAA Steelhead Recovery Plan for this area. Students visiting the open space could learn to track animals, map sensitive species, even help design a restoration project. The district could tap into local resources such as the Urban Creeks Council and other organizations, and the UCSB Environmental Studies program to supplement the curriculum. The students don't need classrooms built on the property because nature would be their classroom. My own passion for environmental protection arose not from any classroom lesson, but from exploring my yard and local open space preserves as I was growing up. This interest was further developed when I helped map the nests of dusky-footed wood rats at the Arroyo Burro open space as a 9th grader. Keeping the Hidden Valley property natural and using it for nature education would give many more students similar opportunities. The rich habitat that's already found at this site and the potential for using that for education would be destroyed by the agriculture, paved roads, classrooms, and other disturbances. In addition, creating a farm from scratch at this site would be costly, labor-intensive, and not as hands-on for the students as putting gardens on the campuses themselves or partnering with an existing farm that already has the infrastructure for educational outreach. Please consider allowing the Hidden Valley site to remain unaltered so that students, the public, and native wildlife can all benefit from what it has to offer already. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Matsuoka and school board members. I'm Louis Angeloro, Vice President of the Santa Barbara Urban Creeks Council. I'm also a retired resource manager, wildlife biologist, naturalist, and educator. And I just saw John Becchio and was reminded of the fact that I've also set up 3 bicycle repair and maintenance programs at 3 local schools. I'd like to begin by thanking Dr. Reed, who came and visited us. A few weeks ago, we invited the school board members to come out and tour the site with us and see it from our point of view. Dr. Reed took us up on that offer, and we had an extremely productive meeting, and were able to convey to her our concerns about the plans for the site and our vision for what we'd like to see. At this time, we'd like to formally request that the other 4 board members join us to see the site and see it from our point of view. And if you're unable to visit the site with us, we'd like to visit with you individually, either at your office hours or any downtown location that would work for you. We're available to take you on a tour anytime between sunrise and sunset, and we have naturalists and board members that are very knowledgeable that would like to share our knowledge of the site with you. In the next 24 to 48 hours, you'll be receiving an email from Dan McCarter, the president of the Urban Creeks Council, formally requesting that you meet with us and hopefully go to the site with us too. We think it's of vital importance to meet with us before your vote, which is going to be allocating $1 million for the site feasibility and environmental review and all of that. Instead, we'd like to propose that you first consider doing a Hidden Valley farm project feasibility study. We think, we've talked to a number of farmers and experts, we don't think that the farm is going to be big enough to really serve the educational needs of the students here. We think that a micro farm such as this, there'd be plenty of time when it was fallow, and a much larger educational facility that we've reached out to, such as Fairview Gardens and the UCSB Edible Garden Project, would be really great places to take kids to study farming. Also, you've gotten a presentation
30 seconds.
previously from Bill Palmisano, who is a farmer, and we think that our educational vision for the site, which we've discussed with many nonprofits, neighbors, and university educators, would be a much better use of the site than an organic farm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Paredes Ulloa, and I come to you today as a community member, a fellow professional in education, a product of our district schools, and as a family member of a student. A student, my goddaughter, who last week graduated from Dos Pueblos High School and is on her way to UC Riverside in the fall. We're very proud of her. During her graduation ceremony, she, along with her senior class, were told that they were not allowed to wear stoles or leis that were not purchased from the school or issued by the school. Yes, parents and students were sent emails that they would only be allowed to wear cords or academic cords issued at the school's academic award ceremony. This was an egregious decision made by a committee that was blindly enforced by DP leadership without any consideration for state law, AB 1248, which in Ed Code is section 35183.1, which states, a pupil may wear traditional tribal regalia or recognize objects of religious or cultural significance as an adornment at school graduation ceremonies. Nothing in this section shall be construed to limit a local educational agency's discretion and authority to prohibit an item that is likely to cause a substantial disruption of or material interfere with the ceremony. I ask you, board members and staff, do you find that cultural stoles or religious stoles, which note the achievements of our students, both not just in the community but academically, are a disruptance to the graduation ceremony? Is it any more disrupting than the random beach ball that was snuck into the DP ceremony? Some students showed their defiance and snuck in their stoles. Others had family hold on to them. Some of them had their stoles or regalia confiscated by DP staff. But I ask, how many students missed out on celebrating their accomplishments and contributions to their community because of a decision of a committee that did not receive proper oversight or educational or cultural competency training? This appears to be not just an issue at our schools, but possibly at other schools throughout the nation and throughout California. Graduation, as you've all stated, is kind of a big deal for our students and for our families. So I ask that our educational leadership issue a formal statement acknowledging the egregious
30
mistake
seconds.
and outline a working plan to hold truly inclusive and respectful graduations at all our high schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll now call up Ishmael Paredes Ulloa, and I have to say our past school board member. Can't not say that. Welcome.
I think the last time I stood up here, I was being sworn in, so this is a nice little trip. Good evening, board. Good evening, Mr. Matsuoka, cabinet, public. So, as my wife before me, I am here to talk about the cultural and religious stoles that, although as I've been told, we're not necessarily on the table when the discussion was being made in the committee, we're still banned at DP graduation, and as I've heard from others, I cannot back it up, we're also banned at some of the other high schools. As you've heard, AB 1248 was actually signed by the governor September 27, 2018, making it part of our law, making it part of our legislation. So what I'm here to ask our board tonight is to go back to BP 5127, which is about graduation, and include language that would come from AB 1248 that would respect the inclusion of leis, stoles, adornments that are of a cultural, religious nature that would help our students represent themselves better and express themselves better. In a district that I am very proud of, that I worked for very hard for 2 years as a board member and many years before that in many different capacities, I know the love and the passion that this district has for cultural competency, for inclusion, for bringing in all the different voices. So I think going forward, I do believe that I did speak with Mr. Woodard. He said that DP would be changing, but I would like to see this change take place across the board because I think it is necessary. I think it is time that SBUSD really bring forward this, not just because it was law, but because it's responsible, because it's something that we as board members, when I was up there, was something that we really were passionate about, something we wanted to push for, and I imagine that every single one of you, including Ms. Sims, who is not here with us, are also passionate about. So again, I ask you all, add language to BP 5127 that could come from AB 1248 to allow the stoles, adornments, or any leis of a cultural, religious nature, so that we don't have to have disappointed parents, disappointed students, or any parents, students, or community members that don't feel like they're allowed to express themselves or their culture or their background. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment.
Thank you to all of our speakers. So now let's move on to item D, A, the acceptance of donations. Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I move to accept with gratitude the donations for June 11th, 2019.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Item E, consent agenda. Are there any items on consent agenda that my colleagues would like to pull? Dr. Reed.
I'd like to pull item E2 and 5.
Okay. Any others? Okay, Dr. Reed, are these ones that we can handle quickly, or would you like to save for the end?
I think we can handle them fairly quickly. I just wanted to bring this forward because I think it's important to note the evaluation process that has been taking place through the leadership of Dr. Wagenet. And I just wanted to sort of call attention to, I guess it's more Family Service Agency that the evaluation was focused on. Could you just share about the evaluative processes and that what we have been setting forward for organizations in this district to ensure their efficacy?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So last year, just to refresh Ms. Capps and Dr. Reed, and then to bring Ms. Ford and Ms. Munoz up to speed, we put out 2 RFPs last year for mental health services. And the board was very supportive of these efforts around mental health in the schools, but it was also very clearly stated that we needed to have an evaluative process, that in the past we had long-term partnerships and relationships with organizations and had not done any internal or third-party evaluations. So that's where this has come from. And so we have entered into or are proposing this MOU with Family Service Agency to look at the work that we're doing in grades 7 through 12. It is being proposed that Dr. Erica Felix conduct this as a third-party evaluator. And I think, Dr. Reed, I'd like a little more clarity on exactly what you'd like me to talk about in terms of the evaluative process.
I think I just wanted to acknowledge that this has gone forward, and I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I just want to acknowledge that, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with these types of evaluative measures.
Right, thank you, and I would like to take this opportunity to say that we are This has been done collaboratively, both the sort of evaluation that FSA wants to see in terms of looking at the efficacy of their work, but also I was very clear when we were working with Dr. Felix that we do want to look at academic outcomes, because that is the bottom line. We want students to get the therapeutic services, so that we know that they have a fertile condition for learning and they're able to have academic outcomes that are robust. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. So then item 5, E5.
Right, thank you. Dr. Ramirez, I really wanted to acknowledge this as well, the GLAD program, because I know we've been rolling this out for quite some time, and the impact of the program. So I'm just curious if you could just briefly tell us the impact of the program and the goals going forward. So like what work, I know we're including work right now with Franklin and Adams, but you've been rolling it out to what schools, and then your potential for the other schools?
Sure. Good evening, board, and thank you for the opportunity to give just some background on this item. As you noted, Dr. Reed, we have been working, and the item in question is Project GLAD. Our partnership is with an organization called Be Glad, and it's guided language acquisition design, and it is intended to support high leverage, high yield strategies that promote language expression and language development. And we have been hard at work for the last 3 years. I'm proud to report that we are now in our last cohort of elementary schools. And we are now, our next concrete steps is to really continue to develop them as a regular routine practice within our instruction. We have our learning guides that are going to really help in being able to provide context for our teachers and our support staff outside of the classroom on how to work with our teachers to ensure that those practices really become entrenched on the day-to-day in day-to-day classroom activities. And so we did prioritize schools that have a high representation of students, of multilingual students and students that are recently reclassified, because we recognize that the development of language is most acutely needed there, but that really all students can benefit from language, from high yield strategies that demonstrate and promote language acquisition and development. So moving forward, we just want to really serve this up as a set of strategies that will help us in developing our integrated English language development program, and we look forward to being able to report much more on what that looks like moving forward. Also, as one of the many components that our multilingual pathway will likely yield as we enter into that more fully this summer into next year.
Thank you. I just thought it was important for the public to hear about the progress that we've made. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. With that further clarification and acknowledgement for the public, are we able to close this item E and move forward on the consent agenda? If so, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not because you didn't ask for a separate vote on it. I think we're okay.
Yeah, I will assume that the motion was for the entire consent agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
And with that, I'm going to close this meeting and move to a public item F, which is public hearing number 1. Oops. And now opening item F1, public hearing number 1 on the Local Control Accountability Plan 2017 to 2020. Ms. Carey and Dr. Ramirez.
Good evening, Ms. Camps, board, public. This public hearing, much of the material is in a report that's later in the agenda. But this is a statutory requirement of our local control and accountability plan. And so we have, a bit later, we will talk about the way in which we as district and as district staff, have engaged the community and the processes we have undertaken, but this is a very important component to allow the public to have another formal opportunity to provide input to you as a board and to us as staff on our proposed plan for the 1920 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. I believe protocol would be that we then close this public hearing.
Is there any public comment?
Are there any public comments? We don't have any public comments.
Okay.
I will close public hearing number 1 and open up public hearing number 2. Every Student Succeeds Act, federal addendum to the Local Control and Accountability Plan, LCAP, Ms. Carey or Dr. Ramirez.
So this is, thank you once again, and this is an accompaniment to the LCAP, and what this is, it is, as the title implies, it's an addendum that is intended to provide a view and an overview of how we use federal funds, on the use of federal funds to support student learning, depending on and with an express purpose of fulfilling the function of each one of the title programs. So one thing that I would like to note is that throughout the LCAP plan, we do make reference to other funding sources, namely federal funds, and this is intended to provide an overview of how those funds are expended and to what end, which we've worked very diligently to try to align to our 5 LCAP goals.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Any public comment? And again, just to remind our members of the public, we are addressing the LCAP at the end of the meeting and under report and discussion agenda. So this is statutory that we allow public hearing. So I will close this public hearing and open public hearing number 3, Santa Barbara Unified School District 2019-2020 fiscal year proposed budget. Ms. Jate.
Good evening, board members. So this is public hearing number 3. I'm here to tell you that as we developed our 2019-20 budget, we have fully supported the LCAP, and this document right here shows that information. We have not only indicated our overall budget's revenue that we're projecting, but we also have pulled out the supplemental grant, which is the one that supports the basic LCAP part of all of the LCAP budget. As you go down, you can see that, as you go down, you will see that we also took out the amount of salaries being paid out of the supplemental grant and books and supplies services and the like-kind services. So we are fully in support in the budget of 1920 to support the LCAP.
Thank you, Mr. Tay. Are there any public comments on this item? Hearing none, we will close public hearing number 3 and reopen the meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School Board June 11th, returning back to now our action agenda, which is item G1. That's Dr. Wagnick.
Thank you, Ms. Capps, board, Mr. Matsuoka, my colleagues, and public. I bring to you for approval the purchase of CrisisGo Incident Management Platform as part of our ongoing work to improve our safety practices within the district. We've identified the need for a platform that would allow us to quickly report safety concerns. And when I say we, school staff, students, any folks on a school campus. This would escalate, any situation that would escalate into a lockdown, a lockout, shelter-in-place sort of situation. And so we've identified this need and evaluated a number of different platforms that are available, and after going back and forth, have settled on CrisisGo as our desired provider to pilot for the next school year. At this point, I do want to turn it over to our expert, and that is Mr. Kelly Moore. I'll actually hand him the clicker and let him explain to you what Crisis Go is and what our plans are for it.
Good evening, board members. Mr. Matsuoka. So Crisis Go is a company that really started out with trying to fill this need for communications during crisis and emergencies for K through 12. And they've since branched out to government and in the business arena, but their focus still is on the K through 12 arena. But what they do is allow for almost instantaneous notification and alerts through apps on people's phones. One of the things that we noticed as we were going through our school assessments and so forth was the inability to communicate back and forth and really make sure that everyone had the communication piece during a crisis. From my perspectives, while the initial alert through a PA or a Bell system is good, that's where it stops, is the initial alert. And we have a whole crisis to manage. And we really needed that piece and use technology to our advantage. And it really saves us from having to spend a bunch of money on antiquated systems. This is a digital safety and response platform. And it goes and is supported by your on your PCs, your iPads, your smartphones, so forth. And so basically anyone who's registered in our system will be able to be alerted through this platform. One of the best things that it does is it really takes our safety plans and digitize them so that everyone has them on their smartphone. And so when you're in crisis, you can check to see what it is that you can do and what you should be doing. And the alerts themselves actually align very, very closely to with what we are already doing with the standard response protocols. And really, Dr. Wagnick and I were talking about this a little earlier. What it really is, the system is a series of buttons, and then we define what those buttons do, so it's customizable to us. So this is really their schematic. The system includes all of these different functions. So we have what's really important for us right now are the three on the screens, right? The rapid response module, the accounting for people, and the incident management. So this will allow us to continue to drill. We'll drill with this platform. We can communicate with law enforcement and fire as things are going. We can almost, at the same time we're alerting the school on how we want them to respond, we can be alerting law enforcement and fire of the situation and keep them updated as we get updated. Another big piece that we're going to be working on this summer is the reunification piece. And this will allow us to do that via the smartphone. So we can account for people, we can show when they've been released to parents, to which parents they've been released. We'll have emergency contact numbers and so forth. And then the incident management piece down at the bottom is really with the drill management. And so we can push out the drills through the app itself. We track and we can get comments from the users right away, what worked, what didn't work, and we can work through correcting that either through the app itself or through procedures and policies. So the next steps, hoping for the approval this evening. Then very quickly we'll move into system configurations, and that's where we'll get their system to talk to our systems, and we'll start working through the customization so that it fits for us. Then we'll working on the implementation plan on how we're going to push it out and communicate that with our staff. Then we'll train the trainer so that they can actually go to the individual sites and push that out. And then we'll start pushing it out to the school administrators early to mid-August, hopefully. Train the site staff, as soon as school starts, we'll get them start working on that. And then we'll evaluate the system through the use of the drills and how effective that is, beginning in October or November. Questions?
Excellent.
Before we go to questions,
Sure.
actually, I failed to say this is $24,550 a year, and the cost to us is a net zero because CISC insurance carrier will actually cover the cost of this. So
Excellent.
there's an incentive for us to participate.
That's an important point to add. Thank you, Dr. Wagner and Mr. Moore. So now I open up to questions. Ms. Ford.
Thank you so much. I'm really interested in this. I think it has tremendous potential. I was just wondering about the reference to it being a pilot. Can you describe what makes it a pilot?
We're going to try it.
Just going to try
We're
it.
going to try it. Yeah, it's going to.
But it's being used across the entire district.
In multiple thousands of districts across the United States. They're mostly in the Midwest, the East Coast, and they're moving west now. They do have some accounts in California, but we're closer to the beginning of the California market.
And is it an easy rollover over of the information so everybody has access?
I believe it is. I think it's going to be pretty intuitive if that's what you're going with. But I'm not quite sure where you're headed with the question of easy rollover. But
Of users?
Users should be pretty intuitive. There's a button that looks like a fire. If you have a fire, you press that button, and then it moves through the system. But we define how that moves.
Who gets the app? I'm just saying, can anybody download it? And is there any aspect that's student-friendly?
So there's components of it that are student-friendly. So we're not going to use right now. There's a similar app or portion of the app that would be anonymous reporting type stuff, but we already have a system for that. But anybody who wishes to have it, who's connected with the district, we would give them permission to, and we'd give them an administrative login. And then we could push out even if they don't sign up, if they're registered in Aries or part of the district, and they're and there is an emergency, they would get notified if they're connected to that site.
So does each individual user have to download the app?
Yes and no. So if they want it on their personal device, they would have to download it themselves. If it's a school-issued device, we would download it.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just think this sounds exciting. I don't think we have to worry about student-friendly, actually, because my guess is they'll figure it out way quicker than I would. But it sounds like a real innovative pilot, and I look forward to hearing about the rollout. Thank you.
Ms. Munoz.
Yes, yeah, I think also just, I think it's great that it could be rolled out during the summer to prepare for the fall and ensure, better coordination of the safety that I know you're awesome about.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
So, Mr. Moore, thank you. I just had a couple questions along the lines of Ms. Ford. So when you say pilot, though, just to be very clear, everybody's going to get this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Excellent. That's wonderful. And can you just describe a scenario by which the old way, perhaps the incident in San Marcos or whatever example you'd like to use with the car that was in trouble and the student who did the right thing of reporting it, how this would quicken it? Because I know everything you read, seconds matter, right?
Right.
And who can notify the authorities? Sounds like this is trying to reduce that time frame dramatically. Can you just give a sort of old versus new with this?
Sure.
Thanks.
So what happened in that event, and I will tell you that I was remarkably surprised on how quickly that event itself transpired and took place. It was about 3 minutes by the time the student observed what she believed was a weapon, reported it, and then reported it to a teacher, then reported it to the office staff, who then picked up the phone, what's going on, called 911, 3 minutes before a deputy showed up on scene. Very, very quick to me. However, What's possible to happen in there is the telephone game. We're not talking, so the person who actually is reporting it didn't see it. So we're losing some details and what was seen and where and so forth. And so that's going to take some time. But we did have deputies responding. So imagine if that young lady either had the ability to press a button and say, there's a man on campus, hits the button, and then another button comes up and says, do you want to call 911? She hits yes, and she's talking while she's watching, right? So we're talking almost instantaneous in that case. We're not sure we're going to push that out to students, but that's something that's a discussion that we'll have to have in the future. But we're really literally talking one step versus 3 or 4 steps.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate this. You noted the reunification, which is such a key thing for worried parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just hoping that you'll spend some time, as I imagine you will, explaining this to parents, what this means and how this will hopefully improve the information flow.
Right. So the alerts will also include messaging that we send out to parents as the alert's going out.
Great.
Right. So we'll have, Cammie doesn't know this yet. Where'd she go? She and I are going to be working very hard this summer on messaging for this app, so that in the initial alert, we can tell you what's happening and what you need to do as a parent, and what information you can expect to get shortly.
Thank you so much. I mean, I see this as such a wonderful evolution of the school safety work that's been happening this past year to 18 months, and I just hope maybe you can give us a report back as to how this is working in any form or fashion, so that we can understand how it's going.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Be happy to.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Ford?
I'd like to just put in a strong plug to involve the students. I think that so many of the things I've seen at my schools were first reported by students. And so if we put our trust in the students, and also if there's a way to trace back in case there's a false alarm, just like with a fired alarm, I think I'd really love to see the involvement of kids. They're the first ones who tell us about guns and all other things on campus.
Yeah, I agree, but we have to be very careful. That's a slippery slope. So has to be age appropriate, obviously, and we'll work through that. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Moore and Dr. Wagnick. Okay, we will close that item. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We need a motion for approval of this purchase of Crisis Go incident management platform, which we learned actually has a neutral fiscal impact. Any motion? Okay, Ms. Munoz?
A second.
Dr. Reed, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to G2, the Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators. Dr. Becchio.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, board members. What you have in front of you is an annual declaration of need. Each year, inevitably, we will have positions that we've recruited for that we will not be able to fill with I would call it properly credentialed in that area teacher, or they may be, as you'll see on the notice, they may be missing a B-clad, for example. Most of our emergency permits will be out-of-state hires that California doesn't recognize, say they're the B-clad, so they'll have to get that here in California. In the meantime, while they're getting that, we are able to employ them still in that position while they work on that permit. But the document actually outlines that by approval, we're then able to go ahead and engage and employ these folks. They are fully credentialed, but quite possibly not in the area that they're teaching. This document also is a declaration to the CTC that we have engaged in full recruitment for these positions in an effort to get a properly qualified teacher, and also that we do engage with several entities on internship programs. And so that's kind of a quick run through the document. It gives you an idea of what we anticipate these numbers being in terms of needing emergency permit or a limited assignment permits. It does require your action, though, for us to be able to send that to CTC.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Becchio. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay. I need a motion.
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Ford? Seconded by Dr. Reed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I believe we have public comment on item G3, the approval of amendments to assistant superintendent contracts. Mr. Matsuoka. So public comment first.
Right. So, what I didn't mention at the public comment at the beginning of the meeting is something, is just that this is a public meeting, and so I'm hoping that as we go forward with all public comments from now and certainly to the future, that we're respectful in our comments. So I'm just stating the framework of inclusivity and respect in our comment making. So coming forward, we have I'm going to read the first three. You'll have 3 minutes, and then you'll have a 30-second warning. We have Sheridan Rosenberg, we have, Justin Tuttle, and we have Carol King, and Justin Tuttle again.
I thought they lost one.
Okay, so I can pull one Justin Tuttle. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sheridan Rosenberg. I'm a parent, and I just wanted to comment on the raise being offered to Dr. Fran Wageneck. And I wanted to just read a personal experience that my daughter had with Dr. Wageneck as just an opportunity for room for improvement, and I just think everyone should know. On April 9th, my organization, Fair Education Santa Barbara, held a private town hall speaking event at the Reagan Center on State Street. Once inside, we saw a woman named Ms. Barb Harnett pacing outside with a group of young high schoolers, taking pictures of everyone. It was very unsettling, and we were just doing our best to try to just have our event and ignore her. However, when my daughter, who is 16 years old, and her friend were outside, Ms. Parment became very aggressive with them and put her camera in their faces and demanded to know their names and where they went to school. She knew they were children. She knew they were high schoolers, and she really would not let up. And my daughter actually begged her to leave her alone, so much so that she put her hat over her face and sort of felt her way to her car. When she got to school, when she told me about it, I said, well, I've seen this person at board meetings. In fact, I was at an LCAP meeting where Ms. Parmet sort of blurted something out to me personally, but I'm an adult. These are children. When she went to school at the principal's office, they said, definitely, we want to know about this person because she's aware that she's working with youth. You know her. You've referred to her. It's not a mystery. She's not a mysterious person. We all know her. And she was told to fill out a form, just sort of describe what happened, and to take it to the district office, specifically to Dr. Wageneck. My daughter did that. She did exactly as she was instructed. When she sat down to talk to Ms. Wageneck, you were very cordial with her. However, when she saw that it was Ms. Parmet, apparently she got very angry with my daughter, chastised her for barging in on her, interrupting her for work, told her she was not going to sign the form, a form she was given at the principal's office. And she followed instructions. And she was given a business card saying, send me an email. All my daughter was doing was reporting that this is someone you should be aware of, and you should be aware of how she treated me.
30 seconds.
And my friend. And so I am deeply concerned that we are giving Ms. Wageneck a raise when she is deeply involved in programs like AHA, which is supposed to fight bullying, when in fact my daughter felt very bullied by Fran, very bullied. And at the very least, I think she's owed an apology. Thank you.
Thank you. So I said Justin Tuttle, and then Carol King.
First off, I echo the comments about the wonderful graduation ceremonies. I do appreciate you attending and being part of that. as well as I want to thank the board for the bold leadership with respect to the Matt Academy 2 weeks ago, and I do appreciate that. Tonight, I want to bring your attention, however, to what, in my opinion, is serious misconduct by Assistant Superintendent Todd Rickman. I am providing this information and asking you to not renew his employment contract, as the DFEH has issued a right to sue letter and he is currently facing the filing of a lawsuit for workplace sexual harassment and other causes of action against my wife, Celinda Tuttle. Ms. Tuttle is a mobile device manager working under Mr. Rickman. As outlined in a 14-page letter from her attorney to the district that I emailed you earlier today, Ms. Tuttle has outlined a litany of alleged misconduct, sexual harassment, abuse, demeaning conduct, bullying, unprofessionalism, and retaliation by Mr. Rickman towards her. Prior to October 2016, she had a glowing performance evaluation for Mr. Rickman, but it all changed following a peculiar out-of-state 5-day conference in October 2016 that Mr. Rickman and Ms. Tuttle attended, the two of them together. Since that time, according to the letter, Mr. Rickman's demeanor, interactions, tone, and conduct have substantially changed to open hostility, bullying, and unwarranted punitive actions. Her attorney filed a formal complaint, and she was temporarily reassigned away from Mr. Rickman, but has subsequently been ordered back to work under him and to directly report to him by Dr. Becchio. To force someone back to work under their alleged abuser is beyond pale. In the day and age of the Me Too movement and public recognition of workplace sexual harassment, abuse, and retaliation, I am stunned by the decision to return her to Mr. Rickman and co-workers poisoned against her. I can only imagine how each of you personally would feel if you, your daughter, or a loved one made the brave decision to come forward to report sexual or other misconduct and then were forced back to your abuser. I ask you, do you believe this is acceptable for the treatment of any of your employees district-wide, especially in light of Mr. Rickman's emails I provided to you and the treatment upon her return to work? Setting aside acceptable or not, is this consistent with your fiduciary duty as board members to reduce litigation and protect tax dollars? Finally, under the circumstances, is this conduct and management style warranting a raise and a contract extension? This frankly smacks of the same botched job that took place with the Sherman family and the Matt Academy fiasco. I also emailed you letters from 2 other employees that worked under Mr. Rickman and suffered his wrath. One even alleged physical abuse of a special ed student bent backwards over a bench at DP who never returned to school after. They both referenced personal experiences with Rickman's gross incompetence and abusive, hostile, retaliatory behavior. Rickman doesn't deserve a contract extension, much less a raise. For you to grant, you would become co-conspirators.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Carol King.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Carol King and was a former employee of the Santa Barbara Unified School District, working for the Educational Technology Department for over 12 years. When Mr. Rickman first joined ETS, tensions within the department began to immediately fester. Staff quit over his lack of technical experience. Others left due to consistent daily accusations and criticisms made against their work performance, technical ability, and personal appearances. I myself, after years of his harassment, chose to leave Santa Barbara Unified. I felt belittled by Mr. Rickman. I know I was lied to. I was stricken of all of the duties which I had been performing for the last 7 years prior to his appointment. How many more good, hardworking professional employees need to leave? Staff members need to feel secure and supported to perform their duties without his type of persecutions, without having to walk on eggshells and fearful for their employment. I have made multiple attempts to speak with Superintendent Matsuoka via his secretary Sandra to discuss these issues while I was still employed. I was never contacted by either Sandra or Mr. Matsuoka to set up a time to discuss my concerns. I felt ignored and that my concerns were unimportant. For the record, upon my resignation, I spoke to both senior staff members in Human Resources, advising that I was leaving due to Mr. Rickman's harassment. I quote them directly, "Yeah, we know what he's doing, but the top doesn't want to hear it." I ask that you please reconsider his employment status with Santa Barbara Unified. You, as board members, should want to understand and investigate further. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes public comment for this item. By way of context, it was item B6 in closed session. These contracts were discussed by the superintendent and the board. Therefore, there won't be further discussion from the board, but Mr. Matsuoka, if you have further comment.
So these contracts come up every 2 years. You can see by the notes that 2 of them, it's their second amendment, and for 2 of them, it's their first amendment. So these assistant superintendents have been in this role for either 2 years or 4 years. I want to clarify as far as a raise, these positions fall under the same raise environment that all employees do, classified, certificated, and certificated management. So they get whatever all other employees get. So effective next year, they're getting the same raise that principals, assistant principals, and the teachers and classified staff do. So I bring to you individual contracts for your approval. These are 2-year renewals. And my recommendation is that you approve them individually. That's just better for the minutes. And so, are there any questions about the contracts? Yes.
I found myself thinking about this and wondering if you can give some history and/or rationale for the 2-year extensions. I'm certain there are plenty of other people besides me that don't understand why these happen for cabinet members. They don't actually happen for principals, et cetera.
Districts have the option of doing just an annual contract. So our principals are on year to year. Some districts have assistant superintendents on 2-year contracts. I would say the rationale for that is because they serve directly under the superintendent, they interface with the board, they have very public positions, and they get involved in some hard work. And so part of it is recognition that they do the work in front of the public, sometimes in difficult, sometimes controversial situations. And I think it gives a degree of assurances to them that their employment runs in 2-year cycles.
But they are evaluated annually.
They are evaluated annually by me.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, so we will be taking them each individually, starting first in alphabetical order with the approval of the amendment to the Assistant Superintendent Meg Jate for fiscal services.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on, that would be approval of the amendment to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Raul Ramirez, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then that would be approval of amendments to Assistant Superintendent Todd Rickman, Assistant Superintendent and Chief Technology Officer, contract renewal. I need a motion. Ms. Munoz, thank you.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and the approval of amendments to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Fran Wagenig, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that closes item G3. And for that, we are going to take a quick break before we move to the report discussion agenda. Thanks, everybody. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are moving right along here to our report discussion agenda, item H. I believe we have public comment for the first item, which is on AHA Peace Builders evaluation.
Yes, we do. So we have Cage Eulander. I'm sorry if I mess up the name. Melissa Lowenstein and Pilar Montoya. We just met.
Just begin whenever. All right. So I'd like to just quickly bring up the fact that, first of all, to preface this, I would like to say I believe that everyone working with AHA has good intentions, whether or not I believe it's an effectual program. So this is not a comment on the intentions or the people involved. It's merely a comment on the need for a program like this. So the first figure I'd like to bring up is the fact that $30,000 a year since 2015 has been going to this. That's $120,000 in total if we go from 2015 to 2019. My big issue with this is that at its core, when you look at the values it's supposed to uphold, the objective of it is to help people deeply listen, inclusive and respectful language, etc. If these are skills that kids aren't coming into high school already having, you have a bigger problem at your junior high and elementary school level. If by 9th grade you can't inclusively, respectfully talk to each other, either A, you need to be reprimanded for bullying, which the schools have actually been pretty effectual with, or B, you need better junior high education on that. And some of these matters like, what is respectful language? That's something that maybe a parent would better decide than the teachers at schools. These are people coming into these classrooms with biases, putting those biases onto the students, and they're getting paid $30,000 a year to do so. That's my first major issue with it. My second major issue with it is the fact that, quite frankly, from anecdotal experience, having worked with this group in health class, I just don't really think it helped anyone. The most it was an awkward experience sitting inside of a circle with your friends talking about your feelings. And I think that that's really out of touch with what high schools need to cohabitate more. And then a lot of people argue that in having this more respectful, inclusive environment, we help bring students up and help bring students to an equal playing field. But to that, I would argue, if you really want to help bring people to an equal playing field, that $30,000 a year, look at what happened at San Marcos. Your auto teacher, you can't even hold down an auto teacher for more than 2 years. Auto teachers are constantly in flux. Talk about the students that need to be brought up. It's the students that would most benefit from a trade class like auto. That $30,000 a year, my issue isn't that it's being spent. It's that it's being spent on something that really is such a back burner priority. And that's a big thing. We have so many issues at these schools. We have chronic absentees, people not reading at grade level, people not doing math at grade level. Why are we putting it into social inclusion when there are kids that, and I would know from experience, I have friends like this, miss 90% of their school days. So that's the big issue. It's not the fact that I don't want more money invested into bringing all students into an equal playing field. I just think that of all of your priorities to be dumping money year after year into, this is not really one that needs work done. And again, I respect the fact that I think all these people are coming into schools with good intentions, wanting to help. I just don't think that the schools nor these people coming into the schools really realize what exactly these students need to succeed.
Thank you. We have next Melissa Lowenstein, and then Pilar Montoya.
Good evening. This is actually Pilar Montoya, and we wanted to come up together, if that's okay. Yeah. So I'm here to talk also about this agenda item. I'm program director for AHA, and I just want to respect you for being so eloquent and respectful in your comments. Thank you for that. So I wanted to clear up a couple of things about what's on the agenda. We do actually serve the junior highs with our Peace Builder program. This past year, we had 120 additional youth served every week over the course of the school year, bringing SEL and Healthy Connection to them during that really vulnerable developmental stage. And so right now, we actually have more youth in the district in Peace Builders than we've ever had before. In the schools where we have supportive staff who believe in the program and actively participate, learn, and use what we teach, those programs are the most successful. Jennifer Foster at La Colina, Bill Woodard at DP, and Ryan Sportel at Goleta Valley are really great examples of supportive staff. And the programs there really thrived this year. 56 kids signed up for La Colina Peace Builders this past year. We actually couldn't serve them all. There were so many who were interested. And Peace Builders is our only remaining district program where we can continue imparting social emotional learning directly to students. And we hope that our work yesterday, we worked with over 55 district staff bringing our expertise on SEL, demonstrates the value of our 20 years of experience and skill doing this work. Although the district's movement toward imparting more SEL to educators
and staff is really laudable and supported by the research. We don't want to deprive students of these competencies while educators are building their skills. We raise $350,000 a year to offer this programming, while also fundraising for and offering teacher trainings, after-school and summer groups, by-donation therapy, and a free trauma clinic. And our donors and board want the district to have some skin in this game. And the $30,000 contribution from the district towards our work is a small portion, but it demonstrates that you're with us. And we want to make our home district the primary focus of this work. And we hope you can find a way to allot this funding toward our programs. And with my remaining time, I would like to introduce Pilar Montoya.
Actually, she'll just have 30 seconds.
Can she have her own?
She can have her own 3 minutes.
Her own 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'm going to keep talking.
Go ahead. You have.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention is that we've been brought on in Carpinteria, district-wide.
30 seconds.
To work with teachers and students in all the schools in the entire district. And we really want to be doing this work here in Santa Barbara with y'all. And that's really actually all I have to say. Yeah,
All right,
so thank you for the time.
Good evening. My name is Pilar Montoya, and I'm the new executive director at AHA. I have had the pleasure of running large national organizations that are youth-focused, science, technology, engineering, and math being one, and most recently in social emotional learning. I invite everyone that's here and those that are watching to really do the research regarding social emotional learning. You are at a place and a time where our youth absolutely need academic, and they need that. But they also need to do it in an environment where they are encouraged to understand their emotions, to understand how to maneuver some trying years, which are middle school and high school. The emotional skills that social emotional learning provides are the skills necessary for these individuals not only to do well academically, but do well in society and do well in the workforce. CASEL has research behind that, and many other organizations have data that show that when we dedicate time to teach social emotional skills, your children will thrive. And Laura Capps, you mentioned the violence that exists in schools. We need to teach kids how to understand and regulate their emotions. We need to teach them how to have relationships and peer mentors. We need to teach the kids to be able to maneuver as they grow into adulthood, because that's the community that I know Santa Barbara wants. And I know that's the community that this community and parents want. I'm a parent, and I'm speaking from personal experience of social emotional learning. The moment I got the information, I started bringing it home. And I encourage those parents who don't know what social emotional learning is, that they learn to do so. I am very proud to be in this community. I actually moved from Carlsbad to Santa Barbara in the effort of really focusing on growing our organization to make it be much more powerful, much more impactful, and I look forward to working with all of you in the district. I look forward to working with the parents in the area, and I really want you to take the moment and reach out to me at AHA. I would be so delighted and so honored to share with you the research and why this is so very important. And I want to echo something. This school district, Dr. Fran Wananek, I really thank you for the ability and the interest, the desire to really make a change in the schools and have us do a teacher training program. But I invite you all to reach out to me, and I'll share with you all that I know with regards to the research and the impact that this truly has on our kids and our community. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe that ends public comment, so we will move to Dr. Wagner for a presentation on this topic.
All right. Thank you again, board. We spoke earlier of formal third-party evaluation. This is a more, feels formal to me, but in-house evaluation process, and we do have the capacity to do that. It was requested by the previous board that we look at some of the programs, and I brought information to you last year regarding our work with CADA, and now bringing you the AHA Peace Builders Program evaluation. Before I dive in, I do want to say, I appreciate having our AHA partners here today, and welcome Pilar, the new executive director, and Melissa, we work with very closely, regularly, and I appreciate them being here. That this is very specifically an evaluation of the work, the Peace Builders work done through the LCAP funding in the 3 traditional high schools. And so yes, the program was expanded to all 4 junior high schools this year with funding from the Student Services budget, in addition to AHA's generous funding that they fundraise for. So background, AHA's been in existence for 20 years, and we have been its partner for that entire time. In fact, my first experience with AHA, back when it was the Academy for Healing Arts, was about 16 years ago when I was a school counselor at the now defunct Community Day School, the junior high version of La Cuesta. So that relationship has been long. In 2013, the Peace Builders came to Santa Barbara High School. It was the first cohort. There were roughly 60 students, and the idea of the model was that there would be 45 to 60 students in the program. In 2015, Dr. Draughty made the commitment to expand it to San Marcos and Dos Pueblos. As you know, when money is spent in the LCAP, we align it to the goals, and we assign very specific actions to those goals. And the action assigned was to create a systematized incorporation with restorative approaches. And that our skin in the game would be that $30,000 a year. I actually met with the folks from AHA, and we talked about what that should and would look like. And there was a vision to actually integrate the Peace Builders. And I still have that vision, so I want to say that from the very start. But I think we need to do a reset. But the vision was that we would be able to, the deans and assistant principals would be able to bring Peace Builders in to serve as peer mediators, peer facilitators, do reactive circles in class, et cetera, as part of restorative approaches. So what was the evaluation process? We had 3 guiding questions, which you can see here. Have we realized a systematized incorporation of the Peace Builders program? How worthwhile was AHA Peace Builders program financially, as evidenced by increased site capacity? And what learnings about how to best utilize AHA as a community partner were produced? So these were our guiding questions. Then we looked at our indicators of process. So all of this was established prior to the evaluation, and Dr. Chelsea Guillermo helped create this, or gave guidance to me as we created this. We wanted to see an increase in the number of RA circles initiated and or facilitated by Peace Builders. We wanted to see and would know that there had been progress if administrators were reporting the impact of Peace Builders on relationships and involvement in proactive circles. And that we actually put specific questions about Peace Builders and the use of connection circles in the California Healthy Kids Survey as part of this evaluation. And so we were going to look at the outcome of that. In terms of the data collection, our evaluation process, we used formal collection methodologies, but clearly this was an informal evaluation. It was not formal research. It is not peer reviewed, except for my peers here. Qualitative data, we met with student focus groups, and we met with 2 focus groups at each campus. one of non-peace builders and one of peace builders. And then we also had an administrator questionnaire. Our quantitative data was from, as I shared earlier, the California Healthy Kids Survey. So here are our findings. The first finding from guiding question number 1 was that Santa Barbara Unified has not realized a systematized incorporation of the Peace Builders program through a collaboration with AHA. Peace Builders are not actively participating in the restorative approaches activities in classrooms on a regular basis or alongside the deans of student engagement with any regularity. I do want to say that that statement can appear to be one-sided, and it's not intended that way. We own part of that as well as a district. So I think in reflection, there is definitely a piece for us in how much did we make an attempt to do that work as well. So I wanted to be really clear with the board that this was a partnership, and I think we definitely had a piece in not creating that system. Finding number 2, the AHA Peace Builders program has not increased sites' capacity to implement the restorative approaches in Tier 1 and 2, and this goes back to guiding question number 1, and as such, the $120,000 has not met its purpose. That's not to say it has not met a purpose or a number of purposes, but it did not meet the purpose as laid out in the LCAP. And then finally, finding number 3, AHA is best suited to work directly with students and adults. I will be a person who will sing the praise, AHA's praises in terms of the work that they do on social emotional learning. I think they are definitely leaders in our community in that realm. And I have seen, as recently as yesterday, when they handled the afternoon portion of our, facilitated, not handled, facilitated the afternoon portion of our training, our Train the Trainers work on social emotional learning and positive behavior interventions and support. And so all that to say that as we start to make changes in our work around social emotional learning, positive behavior intervention and support, and do a reboot of restorative approaches, it is borne out in our evaluation, and it is my opinion that we refocus our work with AHA and look at how we can partner with them on trainings, et cetera. So my recommendations, cease funding of the AHA Peace Builders through the LCAP, shift that LCAP funding of AHA Peace Builders to Universal Supports for Learning Initiative, and I would say that some of that money should be spent to partner with AHA and contract with them on trainings. Contract, and that's number 3, contract with AHA to provide social emotional development training to school staff. I believe that a cascade effect can occur through the training of adults, helping adults understand social emotional learning, but also develop socially, emotionally themselves, and allow Peace Builders to retain the status of a club on school campuses if AHA is interested in continuing the programs. AHA, far and away, the students who we spoke with, I would say, with very few exceptions, really works well for the students who are in it. We did see the number of students, it's no longer 45 to 60 students at each school, it's smaller. And so we're looking at about 15, maybe 20 students per campus. We should work together to try to bring the numbers back up, but it definitely works for the students who are in it, and they they benefit greatly. So questions and discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. Dr. Reed.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wagner. I want to, first of all, welcome Pilar as a new executive director. And I strongly want to state my support of social emotional learning and the importance of that in our schools. And at the same time, I strongly support evaluative measures to ensure that the programs that we are implementing are being rolled out in the most effective way. So I also appreciated Dr. Wagenet's transparency on the fact that perhaps the implementation process, the process might have been faulted in some respect by the district and perhaps with your organization. So I did have some questions just to sort of try to understand a little bit more. Because it sounds like immediately you want to cease and desist something, and I'm curious as to, could there be a reframing of the implementation process? So my first question is really addressing number one, your first statement. And I'm just curious, what do you think went wrong with the process, the implementation process? I wondered if AHA had acknowledged that they might have been better at facilitating. I meant number one, I guess, of the first. The guiding questions. Did they acknowledge, and I don't know if you've met with them, but the results that there might have been a better approach in facilitating this and working with the deans? Was it due to the lack of support of AHA staff, or perhaps would there have been a better way to collaborate with the deans of students? Was there any framework designed to really ensure that this was going to be implemented in a way that could be more impactful than it was, I guess? I know these are a lot of questions, but I guess essentially, finally, just could there be short-term evaluations that could provide us with information and guidance as to how we might implement it better? So essentially, my big question is, what went wrong?
In a nutshell, this, as I reflect back on it and evaluate the work, there was guidance given to deans, assistant principals, et cetera, throughout this work. In retrospect, if I was doing it again, or when we attempt to do it again, we need to build a better structure and oversight and regular evaluation of it. You say, what happened? I'd say the 2017-18 school year happened for one thing. There was plans to do more oversight, and sometimes those priorities have to be shifted. That's what I would do in retrospect, and place more emphasis on it. The other thing is that we did an evaluation of restorative approaches in itself several years ago, and there needs to be a retooling and an emphasis on positive behavior intervention supports and social emotional learning in order for restorative approaches to truly be effective. And so that's part of this as well, is that we need to shift the focus in order to, we're working on integrating those three initiatives together, which is another reason for the pause.
So in terms of also the relationship between restorative practices and AHA, because obviously that was a connected link that was part of the LCAP framework. So was there a structured system? And you're saying no, there wasn't a structured system or framework or rollout of this, even though that was where it was supposed to be integrated.
There was direction to the sites to use the peace builders, identify who your peace builders are, and bring them in as peer mediators, et cetera. Ownership of that and doing that, I think, was the breakdown between whether that was AHA's responsibility or the dean or AP's responsibility. And so that's an area where the best I can do right now is take personal responsibility for not providing more oversight to know when and where it was working or not working.
So the fact is, could potentially work if there was a structured, more design to the implementation process.
I thoroughly believe that it can work. I believe that we need to do some work in other areas. Part of it was, part of the expectation was to have Peace Builders be doing proactive and reactive circles in classrooms. But teachers, one question we asked students was, do your teachers know that you are Peace Builders?
Mhm.
And overwhelmingly, it was, I don't think so, or no. And so one of the great things that this evaluation has done is show us what we need to work on, which is having teachers know who the Peace Builders are, who are the kids in their classes who can really help make those things happen. Restorative circles should happen when there's a conflict in a classroom, or after a substitute teacher has been there and there's been some issues, right? And having the vision for Peace Builders is those students would take a leadership role to help facilitate repair in the classroom. We need to bring teachers in on that. So yes, I think there's a lot more structure to it that we needed to build that didn't happen. And so when I say we need to own part of that, yeah, that is what it would be.
So perhaps your statement of ceasing, or your suggestion, might be more reflective of reflecting on the practices and looking at maybe there might be better approaches in terms of the setup and the framework and the implementation based on this analysis.
Yes, I think we need to look at the evaluation. We need to do some of the training that needs to be done. Because honestly, we have 9,000 students, grades 7 through 12. In high schools, we have about, junior high and high school, we have 150 Peace Builders, maybe. And so those students can be effective, but we have to put the systems in place to make sure that they feel like, or that it's a welcoming environment for them to do that. And I think we need to press the pause button on that work and circle back to it later on.
Yeah, and I respect that, because I know in the work that I used to do with the Anti-Defamation League, it took a long time to set up the peer leadership groups that we did over time, but it was a framework that had to come from the district and the organization together to ensure that the students were getting what they needed, and also that it was facilitated in a cross-school experience. So I appreciate the work. I also I appreciate the fact that you would put a pause on it and then reflect on what might be better, what might be a better approach. That's the whole purpose of evaluation, is to really reflect back to see what might be improved, whether it should be determined that it should be ceased and desist. But at the same time, it sounds like there's opportunity here to build something maybe even more powerful for the students. I know many young students, friends of mine and others that I've met, that have been impacted by this program. And though the groups are small, they are truly impacted, and it's the reason why they go to school. So so I appreciate, again, the evaluation. I appreciate the pause, but maybe it's a reflection piece, and also the work to support the social emotional skills. So perhaps, too, you're talking about the one focus you want to do now is really focus on social emotional skills for the adults. While you're going to continue to do that, but you're going to put a pause on this and reflect on how this might be improved. Is that essentially?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? Ms. Ford.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the introduction to this particular issue. I am a strong believer in SEL, and at my last school system, we implemented it 2 years ago in K-12, saw a direct correlation between academic achievement, attendance, and the reduction in discipline issues. Having said that, though, I don't hear a lot of talk about elementary, and I feel like all of these particular programs are best started with the younger students, to the point that our first speaker made, is that my experience is that it's easier to teach it all when they're young, and then they carry the skills onward. My other point is that I know you mentioned restorative approaches, and we have so many teachers in our system who were very much philosophically in line with restorative approaches, and they just didn't really know how to do it. And so I'd love for you to just address quickly a little bit about the age group choices that you are thinking about going forward, and also really the district's responsibility in terms of responsive approaches and PBIS.
Thank you. That's a whole report in and of itself that I'll be bringing to you, but I will nutshell it. The good news is that yesterday, the 55 staff members who were trained preschool through grade 12 and after-school program. And so that's what we're looking towards. And this integrated or braided initiative that we're looking at is really the idea that with PBIS, we need a district-wide coherent focus on bring PBIS to the school so that students and staff know what the basic core expectations are for behavior. Bring the social emotional learning piece in so that they understand the skills and they develop the skills that are needed in order to meet those expectations. And then have restorative approaches there for when the expectations aren't met, so that to repair it and to have good relationships. And relationships is the glue that binds all that together. So that's what we're working on. I am going to be bringing a report to you all. Calm was there yesterday with about 6 of their therapists. Calm is doing a lot of work. Their trauma-informed school campus work is it's mental health, but it's built on SEL, and it's essential, and so that is there. And then Family Service Agency had some of their therapists there as well. So this is everyone doing the work together. So did that address enough of what you're looking for, and what more would you like to hear?
Well, I was sort of thinking out a little bit, so there'll be another report where you'll describe the proposal for the next phase.
I'm going to bring you a 5-year plan for the braided initiative.
The braided approach.
Yes.
So all I also want to just mention is my appreciation for your reflective reflective approach about this, and also your willingness to take some responsibility. I think it's fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, just, a difficult conversation to have, but I think, the evaluation of it is key. And then I think also, I agree with having the school staff trained for all the grade levels, because that's how you could start, in terms of spreading the knowledge and the approach for them. I mean, I think we've seen, I certainly respect the work of COM and Family Service and the trauma-informed approach, with my background in mental health. So I look forward to the report. And thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, and I'll just add a few comments. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you to AHA for being here. Just to acknowledge the fact that AHA does raise $350,000 for Peace Builders, and so I trust that you will pause this in a way that doesn't thwart any of that private funding that does come our way. And I really read this. I appreciate how you frame this. I think without the discussion, it could be seen a little more harshly than your approach actually is, Dr. Wagnick. And knowing, because of our conversations, what a good partner AHA has been to this district, that this is really, when I first read it, it was like, we haven't been taking advantage of the services. And that's one way to, and that's worthy of an evaluation. If deans of students aren't using these trained students in this way that they've been trained, well, that's, I don't know, that's not my call who's whose responsibility that is, but it doesn't seem fair to say it's the AHA's alone, and I think you've communicated that. So I just hope that this evaluation, I appreciate it's taxpayers' money, the $30,000, but again, to be really mindful of the fact that it does leverage private donations that AHA brings in, and I don't want to hopefully lose that in your evaluation process and sort of retooling as you are in that phase. So I support the retooling, but I again just don't want to lose the power of peace builders. I've seen it in action, and we all know that if a certain school and school leadership is excited about something, they're going to take advantage of these opportunities. And if that's lacking for circumstantial reasons, then we won't see that. So anyway, look forward to the next report on this, and just want to lend my support, and as my colleagues have, to the overall approach of social and emotional learning. Thanks. Yes, Dr. Reed.
I'm going to say quick question, and that is there funding in the LCAP to support K through 6? And has that been looked at?
There is money in the LCAP to support CALM, but we're also shifting money in the LCAP to train the teachers and others. When I say teachers, I should say staff, because we really we're training yard duties, et cetera. So this new initiative, preschool through 12th grade, after school, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. We will close this agenda item acknowledging that it was just a discussion agenda without action. We have 2 remaining such agenda items. I'm going to respectfully ask the cabinet to keep time for questions and keep the presentations as short as possible, given that we've all read them in preparation for this. And so I move on to item H2, discussion of 3 new high school course requests. Ms. Carey.
I'm committed to going short. So this is another batch of new course approvals that I'm bringing before you and seeking your approval in our subsequent board meeting. I have commented in earlier reports when I've also brought courses forward that we have given some intentional thought to how best to batch these so they don't just come in one-offs or ones and twos. And our plan is to do really 3 different kind of windows where school sites can submit new courses for review and possible approval. One being the November board meeting, so it's in time to go into our course catalog as we head into winter break and prepare that for student course selection, which happens right after we get back from winter break and through February. And then the other one at the break in the secondary quarters from quarter 3 to 4, because sometimes things emerge once you're into the master scheduling process, and you can see, or it's just taken until that point in the year for an idea to kind of germinate into a new course proposal. And then as needed, a June, bringing things forward at the first June meeting, because sometimes we see things then that we haven't seen in those other prior windows. So bringing 3 courses forward for your consideration tonight, and the narrative describes the courses and how they'll be situated in our instructional program. Just to summarize and highlight the 3, Avid Excel is destined for Santa Barbara Junior High. We are approaching this also as a pilot. So you may be familiar with Avid. And Avid Excel, the distinction here is that this is an Avid elective experience that is designed to serve uniquely the needs of English learner students. So students who are actively pursuing reclassification, who are very much on track through acceleration and advancement of their learning and advancing of their skill sets, academic and social emotional skill sets, to be college eligible. So it's a way to give them the experience of getting into that college preparatory pathway for first-generation college-bound students while still supporting their English language development. So we're very excited to bring Avid Excel into Santa Barbara Junior High and potentially, hopefully, to expand it beyond after this initial experience. The other 2 courses are coming to you from Santa Barbara High School. One is English 12, that is a specially designed and differentiated course for VADA, for the Academy, and the other one is a dance course to help build a dance pathway so that it is building on students' skills instead of happening independently as a PE class. So just more intentionality around dance as both a physical enterprise and also a form of artistic expression. So those are the 3 courses we're bringing forward, and I'm available for any questions or comments you may have.
Thanks, Ms. Karen. I appreciate how you always give us the context of why we're looking at this now, so in June. So thanks for that. I will open up to board comment or questions. All right, seeing none, I think we move forward.
Okay, well, should I understand that then to bring these back on consent for June 25th?
That's fine by me.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Carey. And now moving on to item H3, and I believe we have public comment.
Yes, we do. James Mechner and then Greg Garland, or Garrud?
Yeah, Greg.
Okay, well, it's hard to read your printing.
Thank you. My name is James Fankner, and I also have skin in the game. I have 3 of my 4 daughters at this school district. I want to begin by congratulating the superintendent for this proposal that anyone who has regular contact with our students must be employees of the district. I congratulate you on addressing that. Obviously, as a result of the misconduct allegations against a non-district employee. This policy, however, doesn't include other nonprofit providers. So it seems to me there's 2 types of nonprofits in the district. There's the one like at the academies where the money comes in from parents like myself, and that goes out to hire people. I think that's what you're addressing right here. But there's other nonprofits who take money out of the district and also are hiring people that are dealing with students. So my request here would be to expand this great idea to include all nonprofits, so that those that have regular and repeated contact with teachers and students. I'd ask that the monies used to pay nonprofits should be used instead to pay the credentialed teachers wherever possible. We have wonderful teachers here, we really do. And to see that money go specifically, I think would be enthusiastically supported. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Gregory Gandrud. As to agenda item number 3, in which the district says it will now put in motion a standard that anyone who has regular contact with our students must be employees of our district, no doubt that this policy is being instituted as a result of the allegations of sexual misconduct that have been leveled against a non-district employee that the district allowed without district supervision to have contact with students at the Matt Academy. Your new policy, however, fails to include third-party nonprofit providers such as Just Communities Central Coast, AHA, the Family Service Agency, and the Child Abuse Listening and Mediation. This agenda item also fails to say anything about the plain fact that many people working for both Just Communities Central Coast, AHA, Family Services Agency, and CALM have had and continue to have regular and repeated contact with the district's teachers and parents. In fact, Pablo Sweeney's mother, Jane Santos Sweeney, is actually vice president of the Family Services Agency. The monies that are used to pay nonprofits should be used instead to pay credentialed teachers and counselors employed by the district to teach implied bias training and provide support for students struggling with dyslexia, and to provide mental health services as needed. People working for Just Communities Central Coast, AHA, Family Services Agency, and CALM should not have any further contact with the district students and teachers. Following the Matt Academy mess, the district will no longer be able to hide behind the excuse that those accused of committing wrongdoing with students are not district employees. I'm also very concerned that this board doesn't seem to be very responsive to the comments coming from the community tonight. You renewed a contract for 2 years for somebody who obviously has conducted themselves in a very questionable manner. It seems to me that the prudent thing to do would be to put someone on a shorter leash, maybe put them on a month-to-month while the allegations are being investigated. But I'm just very concerned about the lack of leadership when it comes to the conduct of some of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes public comment for this agenda item. Mr. Matsuoka.
So my comments adding to the narrative, I just want the board and the public to hear that these motions have been in production for at least 12 months, if not 18 months. All right, so this has been a long process, and some of these are, take a while to unwind. For example, the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation Summer School Program, they've done a great job, but we recognize summer school is taught by our teachers, so it really should be an employment situation for our staff. And so I outlined the initial positions that we are bringing under our umbrella effective July 1. There's a few others that we need to clean up that we're still working on. Let me clarify when we talk about regular contact with students. So anybody who's like a nonprofit provider who works around kids, if they have regular contact with kids, they are under the supervision of a certificated staff member. So when somebody's around, we don't just leave them alone with students. Now, the only exceptions would be like our therapeutic support, but all of those employees are fingerprinted, they're fully vetted. So just want to clarify for your understanding, clarification, I think you know that, but also for the public, that as people have contact with students, there are external people who do that, but they're always under the supervision of certificated staff. So there's my report. Be glad to respond to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. Any questions or comments from my fellow board members? Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that we did begin working on this 12 months ago, if not even longer. And so it has been a process that the district has been moving forward, and I want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, to that point, I'd want to. Both things are helpful. I believe that we have been working. The staff has been working on this, but also part of the situation with the Matt Academy did expose a vulnerability, and so I think both things are important, that we have been working on it, and this is now a discussion that we're having in a public board meeting to acknowledge that that was a concern to many, many people, as it should be, and I know it was for myself as a board member. So I applaud that we're shining some daylight on this process that has been underway. I also want to speak to our community partners, because even though it's important to put in place protections for our kids and protocols that I know we have and we are very much committed to, we live in a wonderful place where so many of our nonprofits want to be engaged in our schools, and not everywhere is like that. So we better not take that for granted. It's a wonderful part about our public school system, that this is a community that really cares about our schools and really wants to get involved. And I think at some point, there's many, and it's hard to juggle them all, and it's not always perfect. But I would hate for this narrative to somehow indicate that this is not a welcoming school district for so many caring community partners that really have really good intentions about the outcomes of our children and the system that we have here, which I believe is the cornerstone of our democracy. Thanks. Unless there's anything further, I will close this agenda item and move on to item H4. I believe we have public comment.
Yes, we do. We will welcome back James Finkner.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me some more time, and thank you for sharing this evening with me. The first thing I just wanted to propose, these meetings are actually hard to get to for parents, and if this could be televised, it would be absolutely fantastic. the dynamics that are going on here would make the serial Santa Barbara look pale. So, in terms of the LCAP, one of the concerns, and I thank Ms. Carey, who had put together a little get together on this. My concern is really in terms of the focus. From the numbers I've seen, we're 382nd best district in California. I can't believe Santa Barbara's 382nd out of 700-800 districts. There's a lot of elementary schools that are incredibly under their levels, with Cleveland being one, McKinley being another, and these kids need a chance. You need to learn to read so that you can read to learn, and I think if that isn't an absolute priority with the LCAP, I think we're kind of missing the mark on that. That we talk about equity and we talk about things like cultural proficiency. Of course, they're important, but you have to learn how to read. You have to learn how to be. You have to get the proficiency. And so what I'd like to ask is that more money from the LCAP is focused on that issue, because this is what the money that is spent here is going to be what the town is going to be like in 10, 20 years, and it is extraordinarily important that everyone has an opportunity in this town. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes public comment. So I move to Dr. Ramirez and Ms. Carey for this update on discussion on 2017-2020 Local Control and Accountability Plan. Dr. Ramirez.
Good evening once again, Ms. Capps, board, public. As I mentioned at the start, actually during my brief remarks during public hearing, thank you. Yeah, we are at a place now where we can talk about an initial draft, and we have a number of different documents. For our purposes, we will focus on the slide deck, and then I just want to provide any opportunity for the board to ask questions or provide commentary along the way. Just to provide some context and overview for our public, I want to just make 2 points, one about process when it comes to the LCAP, and the other about its intent and focus. So to the process, we have embarked now for several years on a very decentralized process. We provide tools and equip our schools to be able to provide or look for different captive audiences to provide them input about our LCAP and how it makes connections to their single plans, to the goals of the district. That includes our parent and stakeholder committees, our ELACs, our school site councils, our foundations, our PTAs and PTOs. So our leaders at the schools have a tremendous role to play in providing context and information for parents and community. Beyond that, we also formulate a series of different opportunities. We have a standing LCAP Parent Advisory Committee comprised of a combination of parents and staff and students. This year we held 3 separate meetings to be able to orient and provide really important and meaningful feedback. We have also sent out district-wide a survey where we have had in excess of 1,000 responses that have given us opinions about the actions and activities of our LCAP. And finally, we've had community forums that have also brought invitations to the community. So we will continue to refine those processes to provide better input. Now, to the intent of the LCAP, the LCAP is a document that is intended to address 3 primary audiences, and you'll see them reflected here. But inevitably, we run into, shall we say, challenges and trade-offs. And what I mean by that is we always will have a limited and finite set of resources, whether they reside in people or reside in fiscal resources. And we will always be confronted with more need than there will be resources to fulfill them. So it puts us in a very challenging position, but I would argue a very opportune one to make very smart and decisive choices. And one other point that we'll make about the LCAP in the time that I've been in the district. We have undertaken the LCAP to solve systemic and core issues at the heart of our institution. The achievement gap is decades long. It exceeds my career. In fact, it exceeds my lifetime. It's recalcitrant, it's stubborn, and it's systemic. But I can only represent that the work that this district has undertaken is to address core issues, and those that have provided structural barriers for some of our students. The benefit of that is that it's purposeful and meaningful work. The downside or challenge with that is that it takes time, and the results don't always show. So I just wanted to provide that context to orient the board and the public to the approaches and the intent now in the third year of this LCAP, and also to provide some behind-the-scenes look at the process we've undertaken. So to that, and I will quickly scroll through some of this because some of this is familiar, but we wanted to just use this as an opportunity to orient our public and our community to the LCAP's intent. The local control accountability plan is derived from a change in California's funding structure. And in short, it was established in 2013, and the idea was to begin to appropriate funds based on the needs of local districts and local education agencies. So in effect, we receive a base amount and then different, and what we call our supplemental fund based on our unduplicated pupil count. So all those students, low-income English learner and foster youth, we have approximately 54% of our students that fall into that category, and they can only be counted once for our purposes. It did not actually increase the total funding of districts. So in effect, what we are is going back to about 2007 levels when adjusted for inflation. So in a 3-year LCAP cycle, we are actually now in year 3 of 3, heading into year 3 of 3. So we're preparing for year 3 of 3. And this is just to avail you of some of what my commentary earlier around process and the process that we have undertaken, many more details behind the scenes to align our processes, not the least of which is what we discussed just a board meeting or two ago around our single plans and reorienting those timelines to better meet the timelines of LCAP to make sure that the season for input, reflection, review was timed accordingly. Again, here we have our 8 priorities. These are state priorities laid out by California, and what we have is mapped those to 5 goal areas. The first is culture proficiency and equity. The second is engaging students and families. The third, preparing students for life, learning, and work. The fourth is 21st century learning environments, and the fifth is early childhood education. And you see the corresponding priorities based on the figure to the left, which span from basic services all the way through other people outcomes, including things like course access, implementation of standards, and of course, number 4, which is student achievement. Again, to timeline and process, our annual updated needs assessment, we really focused on that pretty heavily. This is our own analysis of data, our own analysis of data of different metrics. That really carried, it's an ongoing process, but more heavily seen in the months, early months of the year. The community engagement really begins and kicks off right around the month of February. Further revision in May. And the public hearing and ultimate adoption here in the month of June. In terms of the annual update, this is a very core component of our measurements and progress monitoring. So California School Dashboard was unveiled and released 2 years ago now, but in that time it's changed. So we're still adjusting to the way it presents data and in fact some of the very data that it presents. So in terms of, and these are all taken literally from our California dashboard, so it's a high-level view. And as a district, we have, the little gauges, if you will, are indicators of performance relative to, expectations. And you see, in terms of greatest progress, what we would consider as a district to be our greatest progress, you see there in the left column. Our graduation rate has stayed steady. Our achievement around college and career holistically, and in English language arts, and you see them highlighted. Another bullet, and you've heard me mention this before, is our reclassification rate. We have made tremendous gains in not just the numbers and the number of students that we reclassify, but in the structures that we've put in place so that we are communicating effectively with our students and parents about what reclassification means for them. Greatest needs, and we do have quite a few, but chronic absenteeism is certainly one of them, and we will unpack that a bit later. You see some of the other gauges, and again, that one is just one that I'm choosing to highlight, but there are a number of other areas, including our suspension rate, that we would like to see certainly improve. This is one that is a bit overwhelming just because of the volume, but I would invite the board and the public to just focus on some of the student groups identified over in our left column. We have some of those important metrics that go above the top, and are signaled in each one of these columns: chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, graduation rate, college career, English language arts, and mathematics. And effectively what we want to see is all of our students in the realm of blue, okay, according to the California dashboard. But as you can see, the blue would be the student groups that are firmly in the blue around English language arts and math are white students, and the population of students that are identified as being from 2 or more races. You see other blue boxes as well, but the areas that for us are certainly have really consumed a lot of our time and attention is our students with disabilities, where our achievement on some very important markers is just simply not to anybody's satisfaction. College and career, English language arts, and mathematics. That you may have heard this before, but it's worth mentioning. That is one of the areas, or the area that has placed us on differentiated assistance with our county office of ed. To what we would consider outstanding or at least strong performance. You see those boxes, and they may not be completely visible, but they're highlighted in green. And you see our students that are on the left column, that are student groups that as a whole are performing best within our district. And some of these metrics span the entire, all of them in fact span the entire span of our unified district, with some being more pronounced in certain grade spans versus the others. For example, college and career, that one is an indicator of high school, but of course we all know that trajectory really begins as early as preschool, or even in the 0 to 5 space. But for our purposes, it's placed squarely at our high school level, our secondary level. So this college and career indicator, and I always make it a point to highlight that Ms. Carey can certainly explain this far better than I can, but for a big picture view, you see there the student groups identified there at the bottom, and the bars indicate the percentage of students that meet or satisfy that requirement. The blue bars in and of themselves are indicators of high school graduation. I take that back. Those are college and career indicator. With the leftmost bar, our overall graduation rate, which is at 91.2. So overall, all students, 49.5, are identified as having met the college and career, this metric, as being college and career ready. But within that, you see a significant disparity between our student groups. And some of those are highlighted. The highest performers in our district are very much on par with or exceed state expectations. And yet those that don't, the same argument could be made for them. So next, I'll turn it over to Ms. Carey, who will walk us through our modifications and adjustments. That is just context to be able to signal to you how we made certain recommendations around actions and certain budgetary decisions that we're bringing forward to you at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. And I think this is an appropriate time, too, for me to highlight that in addition to some of the other internal and behind-the-scenes processes that Dr. Ramirez explained, one of the things that I know both of us are very proud of is that, especially over the years, this has become something that is really owned by a team. And so even though he and I are here presenting this, our core LCAP team is also comprised of our Director of English Learners and Parent Engagement, Maria Larios Horton, and also our Director for Research and Evaluation, Dr. Chelsea Guillermo Juan. And we have embraced a regular participant in our core LCAP team, and that is Director of Fiscal Services, Lacey Preston. They're all here tonight, so I want to acknowledge their efforts because it really is a team effort, and it's not just limited to those folks. We bring in Dr. Waganick on those goal areas and programs and services that relate most to student engagement and student services. We bring in Todd Rickman as Chief Educational Technology Officer, and also Dr. Becchio as pertains to their light items, goals and expenditures that are pertinent. So it's very much a team effort, even though you see two Ed Services folks up here facilitating the presentation tonight. And I want to just appreciate publicly the efforts of those folks. So this is really succinct because we just took a very high-level view. It is year 3 of a 3-year plan. And so even though there's lots of little adjustments to details, the things we're going to share with you at the end of this presentation are the things that are somehow we see them as kind of substantively different or adjusted. So again, for goals 1 and 2 and 4, so this is just as a refresher, goal 1 is on cultivating culturally proficient school communities, and goal 2 on student and family engagement, and goal 4 on 21st century learning environments, as a refresher. These are some of the modifications and adjustments. So we had separate efforts related to developing and building the capacity of our stakeholder groups in terms of cultural proficiency, and we wanted to be able, in fact, you've experienced this as a board in the past year and beyond. We want to be able to represent all of that work in one place, both fiscally and in terms of how what our narrative is in the actual LCAP document itself. So we made those adjustments going into this year 3 to we feel like that promotes transparency and a little more clarity as far as what all the different kinds of initiatives we're doing with respect to cultural proficiency and equity initiatives, particularly those relating to contracts with outside or community providers. So that's a substantive modification. Of course, it shall not be lost on us that we have implemented ethnic studies as a graduation requirement, and with your support recently we have made adjustments that require some fiscal support in order to help promote the successful implementation of that graduation requirement. We have made adjustments in funding to one of our family engagement liaison positions. These are positions that help to perform outreach with parents and actually provide parent education opportunities. That's related to goal 2. And as you may already be familiar, we have decreased significantly the number of staff in the role of technology coach. So even though it was more than 6 people, we had about 6 total FTE dedicated to the tech coach position. Moving into 1920, we've renormed that landscape and have a dedicated secondary tech coach and a dedicated elementary tech coach. So that will just further, kind of focus those efforts and bring them into alignment with ongoing efforts coming out of Ed Services. And then every year as we revise as we can conduct annual revisions to LCAP, we have to adjust for salaries and benefits. So that's always going to be there. Any questions on this screen before we get to the final slide? Okay. And then goal 3 is the biggest one. Goal 3 is about preparing students for college, career, and life. And these are some of the things we want to highlight as substantive changes. We had individual schools trying different things with respect to literacy intervention. And what we're trying to do is kind of lasso those efforts together and formulate a more coordinated approach in conjunction with our newly hired instructional support specialist for English language arts and secondary. So we are partially funding the release of staff who, in many cases, were already doing this at sites, and we are sharing the cost of that with sites. So we're just trying to norm that space more and trying to do that in a way that has more intentionality and coherence using LCAP funding, using supplemental funding. You have, as a board, experienced in past meetings and in past cycles some of the variability as relates to elementary PE positions and how those are allocated to sites and how those positions are funded. So thinking back to last spring and that being a topic around which there was a lot of discussion and debate. So now that has been brought wholly into LCAP and is being held by that supplemental funding, and that space is normed. You see support for newcomer English learners in secondary, and that takes the form of bilingual paraeducators primarily. The comprehensive plan for multilingual pathways is the work we are doing to think strategically about what services and what design for an instructional program we'll have for English learners. And so there are various costs associated with that. And of course, we want to highlight, as has been discussed at a high level here, the dual language immersion program and the 1920 plans to design that program for implementation in school year 2021. Finally, our secondary counselors are concluding with their ASCA training. So that's training that all of our secondary counselors have undergone in accordance with the national standards for counselors. And so we know we need to continue supporting the momentum that's been generated there. Those secondary counselors have formed into teams that function like PLCs and examine student performance data and then make adjustments as they even themselves deliver counseling curriculum in the classroom. So we want to keep supporting their efforts even as we continue to define what those will look like moving forward. And then finally, experiential learning. We are starting to incrementally walk back the amount of funding that goes to what has traditionally been an experience in the 6th grade involving outdoor camps, science camps, things of that nature. So we want to make sure that we are now in accordance with alignment with the next generation science standards, and that that there's more flexibility on the part of sites to determine which kinds of experiences are best aligned to that, as opposed to kind of a one-size-fits-all experience that we had done many years historically, because that's what we had always done. So there's both support and yet flexibility in there for sites pursuing those opportunities for students. That's the last slide. So I think we and our team, if as needed, is available for any questions or comments you have.
Thank you, and I know it's hard to fit this all in, so I appreciate the effort to do so and communicate that succinctly. I'll open it up now to my colleagues for questions or comments. Anybody? Ms. Ford.
Thanks. Dr. Ramirez, you referred to the decentralized approach and the idea of challenges and trade-offs. And then I reflect on the idea that this is a 3-year plan, and each time it should be modified to address the continuing or increased needs in areas. So I too have concerns that we have some very serious issues at our elementary, in particular ELA achievement, and I don't see it addressed here in the modifications, and I'm wondering if you're rethinking the decentralized approach and or if this comes under the heading of a trade-off.
The decentralized approach that, thank you for the question, Ms. Ford. The decentralized approach that I was referring to had to do more with process of gathering input. There are certainly decentralized approaches that we've undertaken depending on which action you're referring to. Just this past year, we onboarded literacy coaches as one example. They've just gotten on ground this year. It was intended with that particular goal in mind of focusing on our practices around literacy, around our balanced literacy model. This provides me another opportunity to reflect on the fact that in the content of the plan, you see what those actions are undertaken. Not all of those actions are funded here through the 12.1 million. There are other funding sources, as I mentioned earlier. So I mentioned the literacy coaches only because those exist essentially only in the elementary, and we have really had them work very strategically with each other and at school sites. So we have really paid close heed to ensuring that they're working with our PLCs. So I just mentioned that as one particular action and set of personnel that are focused in that arena. But I would also point to just the prior approval of our GLAD contract that happened earlier this evening. That has been another source of ongoing support to try to introduce a better set of strategies. There's no doubt that it's concerning for me, the performance that Cleveland and McKinley have had. It's concerning for me that McKinley has 97% of our Latino students at that school. It's concerning to me that they are in excess of 70% in poverty. And it's concerning to me that they have had 4 principals in the last 6 years. All those things are very concerning. I have made it my work to try to ensure and be as close to the ground there. How we shift the instructional program is very layered, it's very challenging, and it's historical. So we are doing our best effort to ensure that the practices that have proven promising at other schools that have been in a similar situation, like Franklin, like Adams just a few years ago, or most recently Harding, now that they are in an upswing, that all of those practices, all of those approaches are firmly being modeled and patterned at both Cleveland and McKinley. But there are admittedly some structural barriers that have emerged that we have since corrected. For example, at Cleveland, that school was on a year-round schedule for close to 20 years. I think we're still feeling some of the byproduct of that decision. The isolation that it created for the site, the incongruence with the rest of our schools, and we are only 2 years out of that. So we're working diligently to address those structural issues, and I can only tell you that they're going to continue to provide or to call out my full effort, our full effort as cabinet. So I would love to be able to have a much broader conversation on that, but if you have any follow-up questions, I'd love to answer those now as well.
Just a quick one. I appreciate your thoughts on this, your response. I'm wondering if you can just give me a couple examples of the ways that what has been implemented or the 6 best practices, for example, at Franklin are being implemented elsewhere?
Yes. So let me tell you why we even undertook this balanced literacy model. Years ago, when I first entered into my position, we knew that that the days of being very prescriptive around the development of literacy needed to be brought current. At that time, Adams had already been developing, I'll name two things. I'll speak to Adams first. Adams had already been developing two very important components that to any educational leader, and all the educational research bears this out. Number one is active use of data. So over 4 years ago, we actually expanded the use of STAR as a monitoring tool. Let me just represent that prior to that, our district did not have a common way of measuring literacy. So that is a relatively new phenomenon. The other thing is how to undertake practices, not just curriculum, but practices that promote literacy. So based on their efforts, we really examined, took a hard look, and started to pattern our efforts after theirs, to the point where starting tomorrow, for the next 3 days, we're going to have over 90 of our teachers trained on reading workshop. Very enthusiastic, very eager. And is it hard work? Absolutely, it's hard work. But I think this board has shown incredible amount of support. Over the last 2 years, you've approved over $1 million worth of reading materials for our schools, many of which got reoriented to those schools. And what we realized is we need more textbooks. We need more books of high interest and engagement at the levels at which readers can access in our schools. That same pattern holds true at Franklin. At Franklin, the diligence, the patience, the common planning, the evidence of common routines that kids learn at a very early age and just continue to be fostered and reinforced year after year, so that by the time that they are sixth graders, you see what you witnessed just last week. That we need to capitalize on that, and we have. And so we have made it our point to bring leaders to the schools, to also have those leaders share out to our leaders, peer to peer, but also to have our schools come and see those practices day in and day out. And I could go on and on around the things that we have constructed to try to make sure that our schools aren't silos and that they're really benefiting from one another's expertise.
There's just a point I think I feel compelled to interject, and that is if you look on slide 12 here, and certainly not to diminish from Dr. Ramirez's comments because he's much more intimately familiar with the expressions of literacy and literacy development at the various individual elementary school sites, but actually socioeconomically disadvantaged students and Latinx students did show substantial progress in ELA. And you see the yellow indicators there. It's not the ultimate destination. We want to see those gaps closed, and we want to see those greens and blues, but that yellow represents having attained substantial movement. So as highlighted there in that orange box at the top, and again, this is aggregate and high level, kind of a different perspective than the one that he just to amplify the one that he offered. That is something I wanted to make sure was highlighted. So there is movement for those student groups in LA.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I think your comments about the active use of data were noticed in the SIPSAs that were presented, and we talked about that. What are your plans to ensure that all of our leadership principals are really attuned to analyzing data, and if they aren't, what supports are being given to them?
That's a great question, Dr. Reed. It's been a journey for us, for sure. Our data literacy has improved significantly. We've always had year-to-year data, year-end data. That's pretty commonplace in any district. What we were lacking was a data set that we could all look at together, collectively. Prior to me coming into my role, I asked for that, and quite frankly, we didn't have it. So we needed to avail ourselves of tools that could provide us some common measures and common ways of being able to talk to each other about our practices. From there, we started to derive our own local tools, and Mr. Rouse, Dr. Guillermo Juan, who knows this even better than I do and who built many of our systems, have provided leaders with an incredibly robust set of tools that measure absenteeism, that measure literacy, or at least how we're defining literacy locally, that have CASP scores at their fingertips disaggregated by student group. A lot of hard work on the back end. Dr. Yermawan has also been there side by side to improve both staff and leaders' ability to be able to convert that into actionable and concrete steps so that we can set realistic goals. In terms of what support looks like moving forward, well, we need to continue. You've recently, over the last couple of months, approved a few contracts for next year on facilitated discussions that allow principals and staff, leaders, to be able to talk about what their data is reporting and how to make instructional adjustments and how to make adjustments about students. The other thing is that we will continue to place this work of analyzing data and seeing student performance of all types, whether it's student work or it's the metrics that you see here, and placing them squarely and prioritizing them during our meetings. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that we prioritize on the front end of every single face-to-face meeting that I ever have with principals, matters that deal with curriculum, instruction, and school culture. That is not, our meetings have been completely reformed to ensure that we're not just talking about the managerial component of being a school leader, but rather being an instructional leader. And that will continue to be a part of that. Because it has really borne a lot of support for principals and has allowed them to be able to work with one another in ways that we just couldn't do before. So I'm very proud of their work. None of us are satisfied with our performance in spite of the fact that we have shown some improvement, and certainly at some schools more so than others. But again, we have really had to develop a culture that appreciates and values different forms of information to make decisions.
So is there specific professional development being offered this June for leadership in the district to ensure that they're taking up these data analysis strategies?
Great question. We didn't, and the school of thought with that was that we should encourage our principals to be with their staff, participating alongside with, to the extent possible, on the offerings that we have, because there's nothing like being a co-learner and learning alongside with and in conjunction with their own staff. Next week, during our administrative retreat, we have already allocated time for this very purpose, to look at the data that's already manifesting on a preliminary basis, with another view and another pass at it come August when we return. So this is very much at the forefront of what we're doing as an entire leadership team.
Yeah, I would just amplify that comment that it's not been our tradition to have ministerial training during June PL week training for teachers for the reasons he said, but we have that planned for next week in our meeting with leaders. And just to further enhance the point, we have to both support principals in their own data literacy as individuals and as cohorts, but then also we need to support them in being lead learners with their staff and helping to lead especially their leadership teams and their teacher leaders at their sites through the journey of how to look at the most meaningful data. And so we won't unpack it further, but I would just sort of remind you about the Innovate Ed item that we had at our last board meeting. We talked about that diagonal red line and how it's not just the principals have to hold this, which they do, but they hold it not in isolation. They hold it sort of within a whole system of continuous improvement that relies on a cycle of inquiry that is data informed, that demands data. So it's really not us just saying kind of from the top, we need you to do this with data. It's sort of like as we all cultivate buy-in about this continuous system of improvement, the demand for the data comes from within and from all around very organically. Those are some of the shifts we've been seeing in recent years.
Thank you, and I just want to acknowledge the work you've done towards reclassification, and just highlight that as well. And we know it's the whole child. This is one piece of the puzzle, but it is important in terms of really looking at where we stand across our achievement at our schools. So thank you.
Did you have something, Mr. Matsuoka? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. I'm going to take the time to just acknowledge you spoke really from the heart about, concerns about some schools that aren't performing. And just to reiterate, the role of parents as I hear from them. So many parents want to know kind of the secret sauce of Franklin,
Yeah.
right? And I can encourage you to just think of ways to do that. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, but I get asked that quite a bit. How can we learn? And parents really get involved. They help raise money, not just at Roosevelt, but all the schools to help supplement and fill in these challenges and turn these yellows into greens, et cetera. So if you can I'd be thrilled to hear any kind of ideas, not necessarily right now, but as you have some time to reflect this summer of exporting what we have so beautifully at Franklin to some of our other schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think we can move and close this agenda item G, and move on to item I, to return to consent. We don't need to do that. So item J, coming events. Any coming events we need to announce here?
Yeah, I just say summer break.
And summer meal program, as I already put a plug in for, is ongoing. So item K, future agenda items. I know we have some that are in the docket. Special ed, I've talked to the superintendent about, which I think is a priority for the board.
Dr. Wagenknecht and Mr. Shetler and I are going to do some pre-planning on that report in June. And so when we come back in summer, it's going to be more than a report. We actually want to share some of our thoughts and vision around special ed, because those red boxes up there, it's everybody's challenge. It's not just our special ed staff. And so that's what we want to create a roadmap for you.
Thank you. And I just want to refresh my memory on the sustainability position. I believe that's coming back next meeting.
I'm going to do my best to bring back a job description.
Excellent.
And matched with that is a roadmap of future financial investments in the next couple years, just so that you see the context of this decision.
Sounds great. Any other questions on this item? Okay, our next meeting is Tuesday, June 25th. And with that, I will adjourn my first meeting here. Thank you. I can do a better one.
There you go.